Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us today. I have a very dear friend personally and work-wise, who you know well, Ryan McCann, the director of the Indiana Family Institute. I wanted to start off this video with something that we're both asked before I bring Ryan on, and I'll let him comment on this too. But I often get questions, AFA and IFI are very similar. Why don't you guys combine, or what's the difference? I've explained it like this. It's kind of like the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, and Marines. They all have the big picture, same agenda, but they do things a little differently, and times they work together. And that's how Indiana Family Institute is. We work together on so many issues, but it's actually, I think, stronger for us to have two different organizations because we're outnumbered down at the Statehouse by leftist groups. And so it's an honor to have a good friend, Ryan McCann, with us today. Does great work at IFI. We're going to talk a little bit about some things that happened at the legislature from a pro-family perspective. So, Ryan, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. Thanks for having me.
Did I explain that well?
No, you're absolutely right. I think of like all the money that Doge has found on the federal level and all these billions of dollars going to these NGOs.
Right.
It's all left wing folk. It's not us. So for every AFA or IFI, there's like 1,000 groups on the left that are just causing trouble all the time. So we need a number of good groups on our side as well.
Well, and you and I have testified before where even where we have more allies, like in the pro-life movement, Planned Parenthood will bring 12 people down there. We've got 4.
Right. Exactly.
And we're a pro-life state. It's just the leftist groups, and of course, pro-family conservatives. They've got jobs, they've got families, but this is the left's religion. So they show up at the Statehouse. And so it's good for us to have multiple groups that are strong.
Absolutely. And we fundraise the hard way of, just asking people out of the goodness of their heart for real Christian charity.
No tax dollars.
No. And the other side, they're, taking tax dollars that, doing all sorts of things that we're not, doing. And so
I remember years ago, you have a board member, Scott Schneider.
Yeah.
I have Bill Schneider, his dad, on my board. 2 wonderful people. And Bill was on the city council years ago, and he found out Planned Parenthood was getting money from the city through an arts grant.
Yeah, right.
It's just, it's like tentacles.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
we had a great legislature, one of the best we've had in years.
Right.
So give me your perspective, and we'll talk about your priority bill, my priority bill, because I think you know what those both are.
Yeah, sure.
We both work together on those, so we'll get to that. But tell us your thoughts on the legislature this year.
Yeah, overall, I thought it was great. We were just talking a minute ago about the history of the Statehouse. And, 20 years ago when I started at IFI, and you even before that, we had 16 years of Democrat governors. We had Pat Bauer and the Democrats running the Indiana House of Representatives. And back then, we couldn't get any conservative things done. Back then, there was hardly any regulations at all on abortion.
Right.
Where, it was just crazy, the things that were happening. We had probably 10,000 abortions a year or something like that. You name the issue, traditional marriage, religious liberty, any of it, we really couldn't get hardly anything done. And now the fact that, at least in our list of bills that we tracked, we had like 14 bills that basically passed into law that we supported this year. Amazing. So overall,
it's only 4 or 5 we get to talk about. Yeah.
And back when I started and when we were doing things together, it was none.
Yeah.
It was just trying to fight off the bad stuff from the bad guys and doing our best to do that. And
something you mentioned the name Pat Bauer, who was the speaker for years. Pat Bauer was actually pro-school choice.
Yeah.
We had Democrats back then who were pro-life, pro-family, pro-homeschooling even. Richard Young, Frank Mervan.
Yep.
Those guys are all gone.
Yeah.
The Democrat Party is even more left today than it was back then. And we couldn't get anything done then.
No, exactly. You had like Peggy Welch and Craig Battles and some of those guys that were Democrats. But no, they, of course, their leadership wouldn't let them do anything. And now, I can't name a single state house, House member or senator that's truly, even a blue dog conservative. Conservative.
We don't have any pro-life Democrats anymore. We used to.
No, that's right. They're all gone now. It's radicals.
And there are, there are issues with super majorities, but I think we've been able to work pretty well with that. Sometimes the more moderates are the tail wagging the dog, but there's been a lot accomplished this year. So tell us about some of your bills that you were most proud of. And I don't know,
Yeah.
can't remember all 14. But I
Yeah,
know
sure.
your big bill. Let's
Yeah.
talk about your big bill.
Yeah, we'll give you some highlights. And yeah, I see this all the time from folks. Oh, Republican supermajorities are bad. They're mistakes. Like, you don't realize the alternative.
Right.
The alternative is really bad. And neither of us are like, we're, elephants on our tie kind of guys. We're willing to criticize the party, and we have a lot to push them in their direction.
Conservatives first.
But man, be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
If you got, even not supermajorities anymore, that means Democrats could just leave like they used to back in the day, lead to Illinois, and then we get nothing done. So we don't realize, I think, how good we have it in Indiana. Yeah. But a couple of our key bills, the number one issue for us was the parental rights issue. And we've just seen in a number of areas, whether it's local schools or DCS or other government entities, really just going after parental rights. And a lot of folks would remember the Cox family and Anderson. They had a son, they had a good Catholic family, 6 kids, all the kids doing well except for one son who had some significant mental health issues. And he was 16 years old, identified as a female, got DCS involved, and there was a conflict between him and his parents about if they would refer to him as a female, if they would try to transition him, all that kind of stuff. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. That's not good for you. They got him all the treatment that he needed. But the state still came in and said, oh, you're not referring to him as a female. We're going to remove him from your home. Did that for 2 years until he aged out of the system. Yep. We got involved with our 5 Freedoms project, litigated, was not successful. So for the last 3 years, we've tried to have this parental rights bill that you've been very helpful with as well, to try to have some basic, parental rights in code. The parents are the ultimate authority of raising their kids. And then a separate bill, but a connected issue about defining abuse and neglect is not a parent referring to their child as their biological sex.
That was a huge thing that got in the last few weeks. Yeah.
Especially after Colorado just did the opposite.
Exactly.
Recently. So I think we were the first state in the nation to protect parental rights in that way, to say referring to your child by their biological sex is not abuse and neglect. And Colorado goes around and does the opposite, and they want to, I guess, throw parents in jail and remove their kids.
Misnaming the dead. Even a coroner could go to jail if they misgender a dead body.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
One of the things about that story, and I think I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, the Cox family, I've met them once or twice, is I remember the story, their son went to a special school, I think connected with Ball State. The parents probably thought, hey, this is a great thing. I mean, I get to go to a special charter school. Yeah. And it's probably something they think is going to boost his academics. He gets in there, he gets indoctrinated very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So they had, their other kids are very high achieving academically. They had a valedictorian and, in the family, and a lot of really high performing students. So it's not unusual for them to really encourage their kids to, do
and
the
if
best.
DCS removes one child in a family of 6 or 7, what's that say? Are the other kids not? If that kid's in danger, why aren't the other kids in danger?
It's very common. DCS finds one issue with one kid and they remove all of the kids in the family. Yeah. So they were actually...
But they didn't do that.
They didn't, but through the course of the litigation, they were nervous that was going to happen with the rest of their kids all the way through. Because at the beginning, DCS said they were abusive. They were actually charging them that they were neglectful or abusive of their son. And they thought, well, if that carries the day, then our other kids could be in jeopardy as well. Thankfully, DCS... a long time, months and months and months down the road, finally realized they had nothing to go on as far as charging the parents with anything. But then they continued to keep the son separate and in different foster care families for years until he aged out of the system. It was just egregious.
Now, explain to me in a little bit more depth the language in the bill that honestly I saw. I'd seen it in the RFRA, I'd seen it in other states. 19 other states have parental rights laws. But there was kind of a dust up. It didn't really play out in the legislature, but in the grassroots, there was confusion about, they thought this bill would allow the government to do more than it was, and actually without it, the government was doing things. Explain that language and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some legal term of arts that are tricky, I think, for everybody. They're even tricky for us sometimes, especially years ago, and we just started to get into this. But based on federal court precedent, there's different levels of scrutiny. So what that means is not all state laws or rights are the same, right?
Right.
So we have certain rights that don't go to the highest level rights, like free speech and religious liberty. Those sorts of issues are higher protected rights within the code than others that aren't quite as important. And so we were trying to lift parental rights up to that highest level. And so in legal term of art, it's called strict scrutiny. It basically means if the government tries to come in, all rights have some limits, right?
Sure.
Even free speech. I can't go into a crowded movie theater and yell fire and say,
well, look at the Second Amendment. It's written in ink, and there's all sorts of regulations.
Right, exactly. So there's limits to even the highest level of rights. But in Indiana, we didn't really have parental rights up to that highest level. It's not mentioned in our Indiana Constitution. Has gotten eroded by state cases, so legal cases over the years. And so we just wanted to make sure it was that highest level. And so it's a kind of a legal term of art that a lot of folks, I think, have trouble wrapping their minds around. A lot of the attorneys, especially constitutional attorneys, understand it. But the point of it all was, if you are a parent and the government is trying to come in and violate your rights, instead of the way it was currently, where government could just come in and take these kids
for no reason.
And you as a parent, you don't get to present evidence a lot of times that these, as you're going in and trying to challenge DCS for months and months and months and months.
They're not giving you information.
They're not giving you any information. They're hiding medical stuff about your kids. And we had a bunch of families that had that similar situation. 2 different families of newborns. But they removed newborns. One was a newborn, one was a family of newborn twins. And they removed all the kids and didn't tell the parents what was going on medically with them. It was just a mess.
Oh, the testimony was gut-wrenching.
Oh, it was so sad. All of these situations. So what we were trying to do is take a situation where the courts were just kind of running roughshod over parental rights because for so long, the vast majority of the parents they had before them were drug addicts, were abusing their kids. Now we're seeing a lot more bureaucrats that are targeting conservative Christian families that are doing the right thing, but because the bureaucrat doesn't like the ideology of the parent, they're targeting them, and that's been relatively new for the judges, and so they haven't adjusted, I don't think, real well to that. And so all we were trying to do is say, hey, these parents, they're unlawfully having their children taken away. We want to give them the highest protections within the law when they go into court, that they actually have a shot. Because up to this point, they really haven't, unfortunately.
Well, kudos to you, because I remember working on this back in the 90s, but you guys have hammered this issue the last 3 or 4 years. And I know it was frustrating for you because we got it through one chamber, not the other, and then vice versa. And there were some issues with judges, nothing. But it seems like we got to a tipping point this year because I don't know if this would have happened 2 or 3 years ago. We got bipartisan support on that bill this year.
Absolutely.
A strong vote on both chambers.
We did, on both sides. We even had some Democrats. As I think it really helped the families that came forward. I mean, they had some risk. Because a number of them had other kids in their home that hadn't been removed, or they already have their kids in foster care and they're trying to get them back. And in the midst of this, it's like, oh, should we just be quiet and just try to play the game with the government, or do we try to speak out? Because we know we're not doing anything wrong. The government's targeting us, in an unjust manner. And hats off to those families that decide we're going to come, we're going to testify, we're going to tell our story. Once they did that, I think, the legislators.
Because a lot of legislators on both sides of the aisle were saying there are problems in DCS. They were hearing about from the constituents for a long time.
Absolutely. And then eventually it did become bipartisan. And I got to give a lot of credit. There's times where Senator Bray, in the past hasn't done everything we wanted him to do, but I'll give him credit. I met with him after last session and said, man, this is a big priority for us. We'd really like to do something with this. And he agreed to meet with me, and he did. And we met right before the session and hashed out, some things together on some common ground, and we're able to get the bill where he was comfortable as well. So I appreciate his leadership, because it's hard being in leadership, and we're willing to criticize leadership as well when they don't do the right thing. But on this one, we came together, and we were able to come to a compromise of something that would work for everyone, and I think that was a huge help as well.
Well, it was well done. I'm glad it was a huge bill. That was probably the biggest victory of the session. Another big victory that we kind of took the lead on, you helped us a lot, was sex ed bill. Would that be kind of your number 2 bill, or do you have bring up whatever you want, because there's 14 to choose from or more.
Yeah, the good thing is there's so many to choose from, right? There's a ton of education stuff, and we didn't even have to get that involved in universal school choice, but I think that's a huge one. Probably the number 2.
Protecting girls' sports was big.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Probably number 2 for us was the women's college sports bill. just because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I kind of took it personal because the NCAA is housed right here in Indiana. And I honestly don't think the women's sports really would have been that big of an issue as it has the last number of years if the NCAA had done the right thing from the beginning.
Right.
But they didn't. They actually went the opposite way, and they were forcing states all over the country to allow men and women's sports and locker rooms and the whole thing. If you hear Riley Gaines' full story, that's the NCAA. And if they would have done the right thing from the beginning, none of this would have been that big of a deal. Instead, they are woke and they're left wing and they did what they did. And so
I was surprised because all politics tends to reflect culture to a certain degree. We think politics leads culture. Actually, culture leads politics. But the polling on this is an 80-20 issue. And there's not a lot of 80-20 issues out there.
That's right.
I was shocked 31 Democrats voted. Not all of them, but that's a lot of them. 2/3 of them still voted no on this.
Yeah, it was interesting in committee. You saw folks like Representative Delaney and some that were the Democrats in committee were a little torn about what to do. They knew their base really wanted them to oppose it, but the public was very much on our side. And so some of them voted in committee and then voted against it on the floor. They were kind of in disarray, which is, helpful for conservatives.
Well, I think that vote could come back to haunt some of them.
Yeah, for sure. And the NCAA, I mean, they're in a tough spot because they have, the most liberal universities in the country, which are some of the most liberal people in the entire country.
But they backed off. They fought us tooth and nail last time.
Yeah.
On the K through 12. This was for higher ed. They were a little more quiet this time.
They have. They wrote a statement that wasn't perfect. It had some holes in it about how they were changing their position, but it was basically only after state has passed this, including Indiana in 2022 at the K through 12 level. And they kind of, I think, knew the writing was on the wall. And so they put that out. But I don't think it's because they really meant it.
Yeah.
I think it was because they had to. They were getting sued. They're losing legally. They're losing, PR wise. And so I think it was really important for Indiana to really stick the stake in the heart of that beast, on that issue.
Tip to the governor who did an executive order on it too, which was helpful. Yeah,
absolutely.
Good for him because the previous governor vetoed it.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. And there's still a number of blue and purple states around the country that have not passed anything to protect women's sports. So this really sends a message to them. Hey, if Indiana can do it in the state where the NCAA is housed, you can do it too, and you'll be just fine.
Well, what else was a big win for you?
Well, I agree that a lot of the education stuff was really helpful. There's so many different issues, but I would say, so many on the education side. One that didn't get as much press, but that we were really involved with was LifeWise and religious release time instruction. A lot of people don't know. It's been current law for a long time.
Right.
If you want to go and you have your children enrolled in public school, which the vast majority of people still do, and you want to go in there and take them out at certain times throughout the week to get religious release time instruction, have them come out and get, pure Bible study and pure evangelism, you can actually do that within Indiana. The taxpayer dollars can't pay for it. You have to take them out just like you take them out of, the doctor's appointment or a lot of other things. But LifeWise Academy has done a great job of making that super easy for parents where they'll go into an elementary school, let's say, and one day a week they'll have the kids out and taking them to a church maybe or some facility really close to elementary school. What was never done in state code until this session just happened was giving high school students actually credit for religious instruction. And so I think this is a really neat opportunity.
Well, and last year we also changed the language from the principal or the superintendent may release children, which the law was actually in our favor, and we changed it to shall.
That's right. So the schools have to do it, just like they have to release your child for other things that the parents say, then they need to do it. Same way with religious instruction. And that was great to get that in. And then we took it to the next level of a high school student now can actually get a 1 credit hour elective for going through a LifeWise program or other religious instruction. It could be Catholic, it could be Muslim, it could be, whatever religion the parents are. It's their right to raise their kids as they see fit and give them the religious instruction that they see fit. I think that's what families want, you know. It's not always an option for families to go to a private school. They may not have one close to their area.
They're all full.
They are off a little.
Yeah.
And in rural areas, there just aren't a lot out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of deserts out there. And so giving families the opportunity to kind of, go to the school that they want, but also if they don't provide religious instruction, to provide that as well. What a phenomenal evangelistic opportunity for followers of Jesus. Sometimes we wring our hands a little bit about, prayers out of school and some of these things. We have opportunities. We just need to take advantage of them, and we're glad to help folks do that.
Well, along those lines, one of the bills that passed too, didn't get a lot of attention, is basically we have universal vouchers now. Previously there was a bump in the income level where you could get a voucher. Now basically those are gone.
Yeah.
Now I don't think that's going to change a lot, but I think what it does do is that parents don't have to wonder, well, can I get a voucher based on my income?
That's it.
The answer is yes now. Before it was like, do you meet these qualifications? They removed that. So every person can get a certain amount in the voucher if they can find a school to put it.
Yeah, I think the legislature for years did a really good thing. They got it in 2011, and then slowly but surely they were just kind of raising and broadening it over the time. The problem with that was a lot of parents it changed maybe every year or every few years, and they just didn't quite know, okay, do I qualify or don't I qualify? Now on income, everybody qualifies. You don't even have to, before you had to go through kind of a little bit of a pain in the neck procedure to figure out if you actually qualify. Now you don't at all, which is awesome. So everybody qualifies regardless of income, and it's the way it should be.
A bill I testified on that we made one of our priorities was the requiring a school board to review sex ed curriculum.
Yeah.
So that was a big win, I thought. We tried to pass that last year, got it through one chamber, not the other.
Yeah.
Finally got through this time. What's your thoughts on that, Bill?
I think that's great. Any kind of accountability, as we've talked about before, I think that's what parents want the most at the local public school area. And, they don't even necessarily, and I wouldn't even advocate all the time, it doesn't always necessarily have to be a right-wing perspective in the public school.
It's just transparency.
You need to have transparency, and you need to have fairness. And we're seeing, particularly in the more liberal school districts, you're not always getting that.
Right.
And so I think a lot of school districts in the state were already doing this, where they're already informing parents. But that ought to be in every school district. Yeah. Every parent ought to know if your child is going to be learning about very controversial sexual topics. You need to know that ahead of time. And most good schools already do that.
Yeah.
A lot of them weren't, and they were purposely hiding it from parents. And so I think it's really important to have the school board get involved, because we have home rule in Indiana. Yes. We give a lot of power and a lot of money to local school districts. And those school board members need to be informed and actually taking a vote on those kind of things when they happen, so parents know.
Well, one thing that happened last year, I can't remember if you were there, we were sitting in the Senate when this was being heard, and Gary Byrne and Senator Byrne had the bill last year, and the School Board Association lobbyist, you know him, I won't mention his name, but he got up and testified in favor of the bill and said, hey, school boards ought to be doing this already. Yeah. And the left went nuts. They didn't expect that because the School Board Association is very liberal.
Yes.
And this year I noticed he didn't testify. They had someone else testify. So they spanked him for being logical. But I thought that was fascinating. But
agreed.
Anyway, strange things happen down there.
Yeah.
As we close, and we could talk for an hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I know you're busy and we've covered a lot. Let me ask you about some of the things you and I haven't talked about in our emails to our audience much yet, because we've got so many positive things.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about a few of the things that we stopped or we saw filed that were bad that we always have to watch.
Yeah.
You know, there was gambling, there was marijuana, and there was euthanasia.
Yeah.
You got 1,200 to 1,400 bills filed every year.
Yeah.
Were there any other bad ones that you noticed? I mean, sometimes we see them and we're so busy because we know they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But we always have to be careful what could come up.
That's right. And beyond even the ones from this session and what happened to them, thankfully, all the battles that we saw were largely killed. But I think it's those issues to see how much traction they get, as you know, in the session, to see for next year and the year after.
If something's going on nationally.
Yeah. How much do we need to be prepared? Because there, like you said, there's thousands of issues. We can't necessarily put all of our emphasis in all of them because there's too many. But a couple that were big that are ones that you mentioned, the casino they were trying to bring to New Haven. That was one where we had a lot of folks from New Haven reach out to us and say, look, we don't want this here. And so I'll give credit to the folks in New Haven. They did a great job of organizing. You did a great job, Kathy Humbarger.
You guys use your system to fire emails.
Yeah, trying to just make legislators aware of the issue, and we're able to get that killed, which I thought was awesome. the marijuana issue just kind of reared its ugly head. And, there was a bill where that topic was in that we didn't really realize until kind of near the end about how bad that was going to be, about possibly going so far as to basically legalize recreational marijuana.
Well, that's the problem. You can have a bill going through that looks okay, which in this one it was to regulate hemp products, which probably needs to be done. But then the marijuana advocates got a hold of it in the last few weeks and changed it. We're like, all of a sudden, alarm bells go off.
So that's one people should keep on their radar. I mean, that's a tough one from a PR perspective with some. But that's a huge problem. If you look at Colorado and some of these other states, you have gummies, you have all sorts of candy where you have kids overdosing on marijuana, you have traffic accidents, you have all sorts of major problems, family problems that are causing problems to families in these states. And really the economic benefit is gone now. The states that got in early, if they're going to have any economic benefit, they've already got it. It's not going to help us economically. It's just going to hurt us from a social perspective.
Right. That's one of the things that bothers me about those two issues. And even if we bring in euthanasia as another bill that we saw come up, you don't look at the secondary effects and the cost that has to families, to social services that have to fill in the gap, and the taxpayers pay a lot for the negatives of those things. Everyone's so quick to jump on something that they think they can tax.
Right.
But in Colorado, marijuana is like 1% of their budgeting. And their social costs are through the roof.
It's awesome. If anybody wants to research that, I think it's Colorado Christian University had a great study years ago. It was very in depth about the results of legalizing recreational marijuana in Colorado. And it's devastating. I mean, it's really bad. And you notice those three issues you mentioned: marijuana, gambling, and euthanasia. The problem that we're seeing is the money on the side of pushing those is huge, and there's really no money on the other side. But then you and I putting our tin cup out there and trying to fight it. It's huge money in legalizing marijuana. It's like a corporate, it's big marijuana.
George Soros is involved in it. Tim, not Cook, or maybe it's Cook, who did the software guy, the leftist. There's a lot of big money behind that.
And same way with euthanasia, big money with, in the healthcare field, and obviously gambling and casinos are massive.
And we're always watching homeschool regulations, other things that come up. So, well, I want to thank you for all you do. What's on the horizon for IFI? I know you guys have a busy summer.
We do. We've got our legislative scorecard that we're working on right now to keep track of all the bills.
It's going to be big.
It's going to be a big one.
Some years we're looking for things. You can have a lot to reveal.
Yeah, that's right. We've been working hard on that because we got a lot to do to pull all those roll calls and do all the things. But we've got that coming up. We've got a few events here in the summer. Big one is October 6th is our fall dinner, and we have Dr. Al Moeller this year, which will be a lot of fun. Hope you and Sherry can make it. And
he has a great podcast.
A
lot of people in my church listen to the podcast every day.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and so it'll be fun to have him. And
will that be at IMMI again?
It'll be at IMMI again, so that'll be a lot of fun. And we got our leadership series that's in full swing. We go to DC with our leadership series in September. So that one's coming up. So it's like it just seems like there's different chapters to the year, and legislative chapters ending, but that means a bunch of other chapters open
Thankfully,
up.
we don't have an election season this year. You and I are going to a conference next month about this time, a conservative conference. So that'll be fun to see other legislators and policy advocates. And I don't know what to expect. You've gone to some of those before.
You'll love it. It's, Family Policy Alliance is our national umbrella organization. They do a phenomenal job. We have, I think, close to 40 other state family policy councils around the country. So get all those guys and gals. I know you know a few of those.
Yeah, from way back.
So get them all together and think about best practices and how the full week is really the social conservative issues that are out there around the country, get national experts from all over the country as well. And how can we continue to win on these social conservative issues? And so it's cool. It's the first time Indiana's ever hosted it. So we'll have thousands of people from all over the country, policy experts and other Christian leaders. And so it'll be fun to have you guys there, and you'll love it. It's, it's a band of brothers that relatively small for around the country, but doing big things. And you're a big part of that.
Well, give our audience your website and how they can find out more about IFI.
Sure. HoosierFamily.org, www.hoosierfamily.org, like Indiana Hoosier, HOOSIER, family.org. And you can get all of our info on there, and just appreciate all you do, Micah, AFA, and all the work you did down at the State House. Love your email and your videos, and thank you for fighting the good fight.
Well, you've been you've been about 20 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it more than that yet?
It's 20. It'll be 21 this year. So I'm trying to catch up to you.
Well, it's great to work with you. Great to have you on. Thanks for coming. Our offices, actually, we don't tell people where our offices are, but we're like 25 yards apart. So we're going to be doing lunch a lot, and we'll have you back on again. And just appreciate working with you. And thanks for joining us today.
Right back at you. Thank you, Micah.
Well, thank you for listening. I hope that's encouragement to you. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend.